Hi folks, this is your last video for polynomials from me. So after this one, you have another hand-in assignment to do. Then we have a meet if you have any questions, and then I'll be emailing you your test. So this is your last lesson before your test. So hopefully you've been doing your practice questions in order to get ready for your hand-in assignment. So again, I don't want your practice questions. I just want those hand-in assignments sent to me. So there's 2 for this unit. And if you have any questions, we come to the Google Meet. So today we're dividing polynomials. Multiplying was easy. Dividing is exactly the same. It's very easy. But you got to pay attention. So when you divide, we still use the distributive property. And we're dividing each term by the denominator. So we're going to start with a constant because that's the easiest. So this 3 has to go into all the terms on the top. So really what we're saying is negative 3m squared divided by negative 3 plus 15m divided by a negative 3 plus negative 21 divided by a negative 3. Now, some people like to break it up with that. Some people are fine to put the arrows, whatever works best for you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just look at the coefficients. So we're going to look at those. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 is not 0. It's actually 1. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1, but we're not going to put 1 because that's kind of a waste. So this just simplifies to 1m squared. And so now we're going to say 15. So we're looking at 15 divided by negative 3. So we have a positive divided by a negative. So we know our answer is going to be negative. And that's going to be a negative 5m. So I'm going to rate it as a subtract 5. And then here, negative 21 divided by a negative 3. So we know our answer is going to be positive, and it's going to be a positive 7. So that's our answer there. Now for this style, so this one was written kind of as like fraction-like that we know to divide. This one has the divide symbol in it. I tend to go back and put it in the fraction way. So this would be 7x squared minus 28x plus 14 divided by 7. So what I know is that the 7 has to go into the first term, the second term, and the third term. So it's got to go into all 3 places. So I'm not going to separate it. I'm just going to do the math. So 7 divided by 7. So 7 divided by 7 is 1. So that's going to be 1x squared. So I'm just going to write x squared. I've got a negative 28 divided by a positive 7. So that's going to give me a negative 4x. And then 14, positive 14 divided by a positive 7 is going to give me a positive 2. So I find that it's easier for me to see it as a fraction, like to actually put it in fraction form. So if I get it like this, I usually write it like this. But if you don't have to, that's okay. You don't have to always write it in fraction form. That's just something that helps me, because that's what I like to see. So now, that was the easy part. That was doing by constant, so just by a number. Now we're going to divide by a monomial. So dividing by a monomial, you see I have a few more examples here so we can practice. So remember, if they have the same base, you're going to subtract the exponents. So I'm a big fan of arrows. So I always like to draw my arrows in first. So I'm going to do 3 divided by 3. We know that gives us 1. I'm just going to write it down this time. So g squared divided by g, and this has an invisible exponent of 1. So letter g, keep the letter g, and then 2 subtract 1. So you always go top to bottom. So 2 minus 1 is 1. I didn't have to write either of those ones in, but I did it. So now I'm going over here. 9 divided by 3 is going to be a plus 3 because it's a positive 9 and a positive 3. And now I have, keep the g, and now I have 1 minus 1 gives me 0. That's weird. But we know anything to the exponent of 0 has a value of 1. So I'm going to rewrite this as g plus 3. So that is my answer. I don't want to see this because this has a value of 1. So 3 times 1 is the 3 here. So I don't want to see that g to the exponent 0 because that's not something that mathematicians do. It's not something that we write down a lot, but you just need to know that it has a value of 1. So g0 has a value of 1. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to draw my arrows in. So negative 18 divided by 6 is going to be a negative 3. I write down my f. So 2 minus the invisible 1 is going to be f to the exponent 1. And then I have a positive 12 divided by 6, so that's going to be a 2. I write down my f, and this has an invisible 1, so 1 minus 1 is 0. So this is going to be negative 3f plus 2, because we know this has a value of 1. So Miss Scallion, do I have to keep writing down? Those look like Q's, backward Q's. Those are my cursive F's. Do I have to write that down if I know they just cancel out? And no, you don't. You don't have to write them down. I'm just writing it down so your notes are full and complete and that you can see the math that we're doing, that it's consistent. So I'm going to draw my little arrows because that has to go into both terms. So 24 divided by negative 4 is going to be a negative 6. And we're going to have d squared divided by d is d to the exponent 1 minus 2, because 8 divided by negative 4 is a negative 2. And those d's, keep my d, go to a 0. So I'm going to have negative 6d minus 2. So that's my answer. So I don't want to see you writing this line here or that line there. I want to see these answers. I know I'm being particular about it, but those of you moving on to intro or further down the line, we don't want to see F's or G's or D's to the exponent 0. All right, so our last two. The 3 has to go into the first term, the middle term, and the last term. All right, so 6 divided by 3 is 2. And I keep the x, and then I subtract the exponent. So this has an exponent of 1. All right, so 4 minus 1 is 3. Okay, good. Negative 3 divided by 3 is negative 1. And then we keep the x, and we have a 2 minus 1, so it leaves us with a 1. But what about that y? Well, the good thing is that we have no y's, so we just write it down again. Easy peasy. And then going to our last one, 9, positive 9 divided by a positive 3 is 3. The x's, keep the x, that's going to go to 0, and then we just write down our y. So now we're going to clean it up. We're going to get rid of any 1s or any x to the exponent 0s. So we're going to have 2x cubed minus xy, because I don't have to write this and I don't have to write that. And then I'm going to have plus 3y, because this has a value of 1. And so 3 times 1 is just the 3. So this would be my final answer. That's what I'm looking for. All right, so I'm going to write this one down in fraction form because it helps me. So I've got 8x to the exponent 4 minus 6x to the exponent 5 plus 2x squared. And that's all over 2x squared. So has to go into all 3 terms. So I like to write my arrows just to remind me. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. I write down the x, and we subtract the exponents. So 4 minus 2 is 2. That's good. So negative 6 divided by 2 is a negative 3. Write down the x. 5, subtract the 2 is a 3. And then we have 2 divided by 2, so that's going to be a 1. And then we have keep the x, and then 2 minus 2 is 0. So now we're going to clean that up a little bit. So I've got 4x squared minus 3x cubed. I don't have to write that 1, but hold on. This has a value of 1. Okay, so what's 1 times 1? So this, in this case, I am writing down the number 1 because 1 times 1 gives me the answer of 1. So this, and that makes sense when you think about it. Anything divided by itself, these two are the exact same thing. Anything divided by itself is 1. So if you can get that premise, if that makes sense to you, you can just jump right to this line if that makes sense to you. If you want to show the second step, the helping step, I think that's important too as we learn. So if you're finding yourself making the same mistake over again, write down that extra step because it really will solidify and help you in the long run. So that's it for the polynomials unit. You have hand-in assignment 2 and you'll be having your test. If you have any questions, please let me know.